I'm sure you've all been wondering what it feels like to get your heart ripped out of your chest while reading a book. Actually, you probably haven't been wondering that, but if you ever are, you should read this. Let's start at the beginning. Okay, we just got back from Barnes & Noble and I went with this book, If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. I'm gonna make a big giant coffee and then change into some comfy clothes and then we're gonna start this book. We've got the heating pad and the coffee. We're ready to read. Good when you start annotating it, okay? I have read 5 chapters. I'm on page 25. I am liking that the chapters are short. Makes it a lot easier to read for me and a lot easier to follow the story with the short chapters, I think. I will say in 2 or 3 different parts, it was a little bit hard for me to follow the writing, but Laura Nolan tied it back together really well at the end of the chapter, like that helped me better understand what was going on. We're following 2 characters so far, Finney and Autumn. Finney is like this popular kid who's involved in the soccer team and the popular kid versus misfit type of trope. Autumn and Finney grew up together. Their moms are best friends. I got this book recommendation off of Haley Pham's channel, and she did say in her book that this is the only book she's read where the characters are so young, which I actually completely forgot about until I started reading it, and they said something about 7th grade, and I was like, that's so young. But yeah, I'm gonna keep reading and then we'll see what I think after a few more chapters. Made it to chapter 11. I'm on page 49. Took me 49 minutes to read 49 pages. I'd say that's pretty good. I will say I was not expecting a lot of what this book is, but it's so far really good. I think Laura Nolan is an expert at telling details. I also think that she writes love at the age that they're in so extremely well. I'm trying to place myself back to when I was 12, 13, 14 in that era of my life and like try and think about what love was to me then. So Autumn has a boyfriend named Jamie that we're following along with. And something that I underlined was sometimes we both love each other a lot and it's hard to hang up at night and I wish it could always be like that. But she also says, sometimes he loves me more than I love him. So that's what got me thinking, like, what is love at that age to certain people? Because love means something different to everyone. And also, at 12 or 13, people think love is almost exchangeable in a way. One of the quotes that I underlined that I thought was, like, so niche to the story was, I was a misfit who had found other misfits to fit in with. So we've got this much of the book read, and I'm gonna try and read all the way to 150 tonight. I think we're just hitting the first climax of this story. Something going on with the mom. I'm not gonna say what because I don't want to give away too many spoilers. Something going on with Autumn's mother. She ends up going to Finney's house because she forgot her keys at school. So we'll see what happens. Finney is Finn. By the way, Autumn calls Finn Finney. Yeah. Let me gather myself. I had to take notes so I wouldn't forget what I was thinking and feeling in the moment while I was reading this book. I've been reading for an hour and 39 minutes and I'm on page 87, chapter 19. The first thing I wrote down is I think I'm starting to understand the title a little bit more. The first chapter takes us into this horrible tragedy that happens and then it kind of goes into the backstory of like before that happened. Our main character, Miss Autumn, she's constantly in a battle with herself over who or what she wants out of these 2 boys. Another thing I've noticed because Autumn also tends to compare her relationship with a lot of other people or things, especially people in her friend group or people like Finny and Sylvie. That also just makes me think of how immature we are at the ages of 13 to 16. We think we know a lot when we really don't. We think we know what love means when we really don't. And it just makes me think of the Bible verse, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that that's what's stealing her joy in these moments. And then there was also a scene in the book where her friends and her friend group make her take like the quizzes out of a magazine, kind of like a BuzzFeed quiz, if you know what I'm saying. And it was almost like peer pressure-y in a way, because they made her take the test as she was thinking about Finn instead of her boyfriend Jamie. And it just got me thinking, are her friends really her friends? I don't know what's going on there. I'm kind of like trying to figure it out in my head. And the last thing I wrote down is just like, what is making it so hard for her to understand her own feeling? Is she scared of hurting someone, scared of rejection, scared of losing friends, or like messing up the space-time continuum? I don't know. One of the scenes she says, I'm trying to make my breath rise and fall with his. I'm feeling satisfied, which does not always happen when he and I are together. So we're also just trying to figure out literally what's going on in her head. On chapter 19, page 87, I'm gonna keep reading. I'm gonna try and finish this by tomorrow. 8:21. We've been reading for an hour and 52 minutes nonstop, pretty much nonstop. Page 94, dinner break. I am gonna start my timer up and read though, because I started scrolling on Reels and then I just found myself thinking about what's going on in the book and I just want to know what happens. Reading party has been moved to the bedroom because I started feeling so nauseous for some reason. I think the food I was eating, I don't know. I just started feeling sick. We're on page 107, chapter 22. We'll see how far I get by the morning. It's the next day. I wrote down all of my thoughts from reading last night. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't get as far as I thought that I would last night. I started to feel kind of nauseous and sick, so I just went to bed. I think the last time we spoke, I was before page 100. I'm currently on page 130. I also never stop in the middle of a chapter, and I had to last night. I just started feeling so nauseous and got lightheaded, and I just needed to go to sleep. We've been reading for 2 hours and 39 minutes, and yes, I did write down all of my thoughts again. My main thought throughout this whole thing was you almost forget what's going on in Autumn's life at home because she's so focused on Jamie and Finny. Her dad is not in the picture a lot, so I forget about that little side story going on because she's so focused on the boys. And the whole scene of Autumn and Finny sitting outside under a tree, oh my gosh, I was like kicking my feet reading that. So angsty. It's so like, it just took me back to that age when you have a crush and you're just so like fully invested and fully involved, trying to hide all your feelings. I don't know. I will say I haven't gotten to any like spice, if that's what you want to call it, but they talk about it. There's not a lot of talk about it. I don't even know if that makes sense, but also the scene that caught my attention the most, I feel like, was when Autumn got sick in class and Finny and Jamie both stood up as she was running out of the classroom to go throw up in the bathroom. And it was just the fact that they both stood up and I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. There was an F-bomb, I will say that. And I will say a lot of books like this usually have like an insufferable male lead that's so clearly not right for the main character. And I wouldn't say that Jamie's like insufferable, but you can definitely like be on Finny's side. Everyone's like gonna be rooting for Finny because they've known each other since they were kids. Something that I like just picked up on is Finny's mom versus Autumn's parents are so different. Like Finny's mom is like creative, whimsical, like their house isn't fully put together, and Finny is like the opposite, like put together, popular, like organized, structured, that kind of thing. And then Autumn's parents are like put together, organized. Autumn is like misfit kid who doesn't fit in, wearing mismatched clothes and tiaras every day. I just thought that was interesting. Also, this book's writing low-key reminds me of John Green in a way. Not the storytelling aspect, but just some of the descriptive sentences being used. It reminded me of Looking for Alaska or The Fault in Our Stars. So a lot of Autumn's friends are getting broken up with or breaking up at the part where I'm at. On page 118, Autumn says that she tries to picture her and Jamie breaking up, and I'm gonna read you this little passage, so tap ahead if you don't want to hear. She says, "My first reaction is a shocking sense of relief. If Jamie and I broke up, it would mean that he wasn't the great love of my life. I wouldn't have to feel guilty anymore that I sometimes think about being with someone else, wondering if it would be better, maybe even perfect with him." Do y'all know who she's talking about? I really want to finish this book today. I do have a little bit of homework to do, so I don't know if that's going to happen, but we're definitely finishing this by tomorrow at least. I'm on page 130 out of like 380, I think. I'm going to read a little bit before church. So, I feel like every time I try to talk, I lose my words. 3 hours and 28 minutes in. Chapter 34, page 179. I have so many thoughts going through my head about this book right now. Let me just say, Autumn is constantly fighting the urge to think about constantly fighting the urge to. One thing that Finney said that really stuck out to me was, "You should be a writer. You'll find a way to make it." He's so supportive. He's literally so supportive for her. And Jamie just wants her to be like something that she's not, which is normal. She's not normal. And that's the whole like premise of who she is. She's not normal. And Jamie like wants her to be normal, even though he classifies himself as a misfit too. The way that Jamie is putting that onto Autumn is just so ironic considering the group of friends that they have. And then there's Finney who like wants her to follow her dreams. And we can just kind of infer that Jamie doesn't really want her to do that and wants her to take like a safer route in life. I don't know. Just can't stop thinking about how well Laura Nolan is writing how being a teenager feels. Every time I read a new chapter, I'm just constantly put back at that age in my mind, and I'm just like, she's writing it so extremely well that I'm like, from like the silent competitions in friend groups at school to like even like the silent comparisons of like each individual person, it's always just like these little silent weird things and ticks that like set each other off, especially at that age. And she just writes it so well. I just can't get enough of it. It's like literally that's what's driving me to finish this book. Something else that I noted is Autumn just always checks out of reality when she sees Finney with Sylvie. She either like opens her book or literally starts to think about something else. Something that I did find myself thinking is I wish she described the characteristic traits of who they are a little bit more. Like trying to picture in my head like what they look like, and I feel like I need a little bit more detail to fully like comprehend the story. Autumn also usually has like lingering thoughts about Jamie in the back of her head, which are usually leaning towards the negative side. Something else that I found pretty interesting that Laura Nolan did was she wrote a quote that she had already previously written in another chapter, and it also ties back to Autumn's name being Autumn. My final thoughts before I continue reading this book. Page 179. This is a huge spoiler and I'm not going to give it away, but I literally... Let's just say that Autumn admits something to herself that you didn't really see coming in that moment. And she's so stubborn that you really didn't see it coming in that moment. My jaw literally dropped when I read the line. You'll know what I'm talking about if you read the book. Time to start chapter 35. For 6 hours total. Been right at 48 hours since we bought the book. I only have about 30 pages left. I'm on chapter 76. Let's just say I have so many thoughts about what's going on in this story. There were a lot of plot twists that I didn't expect, which I loved, and I've written down so many notes, but I don't want to give away any spoilers, so I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut until I'm done reading it. to sit here and collect myself for the better part of 45 minutes to an hour. I watched a YouTube short that summed up how I'm feeling perfectly. You know the tragedy at the beginning of the book because it's in chapter 1. But when you get to the end, after the story tells you what leads up to the tragedy, there's like 10 more pages of the tragedy that we didn't know about in the beginning, and it's just so heartbreaking all over again. First of all, we read this book in 6 hours and 48 minutes. I bought it 2 days ago, literally like 48 hours ago, so it took us that long to read it. I'm also kind of a slow reader. I read about 1.10 pages per minute, I guess. That's not that bad. I'm just gonna dive right into my review because I fear that for our first book review on this channel, we have a 5-star. Guys, we do. I have not found myself giggling and kicking my feet at a book like this since I read like The Fault in Our Stars, okay? The details in her writing also reminded me a lot of John Green, which I don't take lightly because he's literally one of my favorite authors, as cliche as it is. He wrote my favorite book, which is Looking for Alaska, and a lot of the details that she wrote in this book specifically just had me thinking back to either The Fault in Our Stars or Looking for Alaska, and I was just like, I don't know, I just thought that was cool. I'm gonna start talking about the characters in my review because Laura Nolan just wrote these characters so perfectly. Autumn, this quirky misfit girl who doesn't fit in school, wears tiaras every day. And you have Finney, who's like on the soccer team, jock, popular, do I have to say more? And they grew up best friends. Their moms were best friends when they were young. They grew up best friends and next door neighbors. I mean, couldn't be any more perfect, right? Wrong. Jamie comes into the picture, starts dating Autumn. You'll see how that plays out. Something that I love that she wrote is how at the age that they're at in their years of high school, what we think we need versus what we actually need is so different. On page 226, there was a line that says, "Acceptance is what he has given me." And I know I'm lucky to have that, and I think that that's enough. I mean, it's just so crazy to think that the bare minimum in high school is what we think we deserve. And I think that she wrote that really well, especially with Autumn's character and everything that goes on in Autumn's head. Just related those two things really, really well. I will also say that the second half of this book went by way, way faster than the first half. The first half was kind of just leading up to what the second half was, which I guess is every book, but it was much slower. I didn't get bored at all throughout this book. I will say that. I did not get bored. I was like constantly turning the page. I was in the bath reading. I was like on the toilet reading. I was reading while I was cooking last night. Like, I could not put this down. Okay, I had to know what happened. There was also a few plot twists that I did not expect, that I literally was sitting like this looking at my book. Literally jaw dropped. I was yelling at my husband and I was like, "Jake! Oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe." I've been like explaining the story to him because he's not gonna read this and he's like, "Oh my gosh." I also love how Laura Nolan lets us infer things about what's going on in Autumn's mind, because there's some sentences throughout the whole book that Autumn is thinking something or she's talking to someone and then it trails off or it has like a ... and we don't know what she's thinking or what she's gonna say, but we can infer what she's gonna say by who she is as a character, if that makes sense. I thought that was really interesting because we can all kind of interpret it in a different way. On page 364, the book did start to move really, really fast. That's when I got into like reading mode and I literally could not move my eyes. I had to know what happened. And then at that point also the title of the book got used in the book and that's when I was like sobbing. Okay, I was sobbing. I like started crying. One specific thing that, actually no, I'm not gonna say that. It would be a spoiler, I'm not gonna say it. The last thing that I'm gonna add is the last page did confuse me a little bit. Maybe that's naive of me, but very last page confused me a tad. If you're looking for a good, easy book, it's gotta be this. Dude, I literally cannot sing the praises of this author more. The writing was excellent. The story was so easy to follow and actually interesting to follow. There was one spy scene, which I don't like to read in books, and there was one spy scene. They did like allude to it a little bit in the parts leading up to it, but just one scene in particular. So if you're not looking for that, don't read this or just skip over it. It was just one chapter. This is my first book review for YouTube, and I think starting out with a 5-star is setting the bar pretty high. So I am now craving a strong enemies to lovers book. So if you have any recommendations, please comment them below. I love a good fantasy, I love a good romance, I love a good rom-com. Let me know what other kind of videos you want to see from me because I'm gonna keep doing these. I'm gonna try and have one out at least once a week. I do start a new job in like July-ish, so it might dwindle down at that point. Hoping that this could become my full-time job because I enjoy it so much. I love making videos and I love reading, and I just want to show y'all what you want to see. So comment down below if you have any video ideas, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.